Here's what I find strange. Everyone wants to talk about how millennials are broke and Gen Z is anxious. But nobody's talking about the generation caught in the middle, the ones who are actually more financially traumatized than any other group, and we just keep ignoring it. Generation X, born roughly between the early 1960s and late 1970s, leads every other generation in experiencing financial trauma. 74% report challenges. That's higher than millennials, higher than Gen Z, higher than baby boomers. I want you to sit with that number for a second. 3 out of 4 Gen Xers carry financial trauma. Not just stress, actual trauma. And most people have no idea this is happening because we spend all our attention on the generations on either side of them. And honestly, when you look at what shaped them, it makes complete sense. Let me walk you through something that I think most people miss when they try to understand why Gen X handles money so differently. The silent generation, Gen X's grandparents and great-grandparents, endured the Great Depression and just didn't talk about money. They survived. That's it. 56% of Gen Xers said their family never or rarely talked about finances growing up. Think about what that actually costs you. You're learning how the world works. You're watching the adults around you navigate economic life. And they're doing it in complete silence. No explanations, no frameworks, no context for why things are hard or how to prepare. 43% of adults who never or rarely spoke about money growing up report feeling like they never learned about financial planning. Another 43% say they don't understand how to build credit. Gen X inherited a scarcity mindset wrapped in silence. And then the economy decided to test them over and over again. They came of age during the dot-com crash, and September 11th lost more than half their home equity during the 2008 Great Recession, and then faced job and market disruptions during COVID. Every single one of those happened during what should have been their prime earning and saving years. Those setbacks robbed them of key saving opportunities. And here's where it gets weird. Because despite all of this, despite the trauma, despite the lack of financial education, despite getting hammered by multiple recessions, Gen Xers save about 16% of their post-tax income. That's more than millennials and baby boomers combined, who both save less than 10%. They're saving more than almost anyone. And yet 27% of Gen X has less than $1,000 in savings, according to the 2024 Forbes Advisor survey. How does that make sense? How can a generation be both the best savers and also the most vulnerable at the same time? It's because they're not just saving for themselves. Gen X invests the most in education, often supporting their children's schooling. They're paying for aging parents. They're dealing with healthcare costs. They're sandwiched between generations that need them while trying to prepare for a retirement that looks increasingly uncertain. The oldest Gen Xers will reach Social Security eligibility between 2033 and 2036, right when trust funds may be depleted and payouts likely reduced. They watch their parents rely on pensions that don't exist anymore. They're staring at a system that might not be there when they need it. And you know what's wild? Gen X tends to be cautious with spending, yet 19% of them overspend weekly. On the surface, that sounds contradictory. But I think it reveals something deeper about what happens when you carry financial trauma for decades. You develop this split behavior. You're hyper-vigilant about the big picture, retirement, savings, stability, but the day-to-day decisions become almost impossible to control because you're constantly operating from a place of stress. 60% of Gen Xers say that money negatively impacts their mental health, a huge increase from the previous year. 54% reported stress and anxiety, with only 33% saying they were confident or in control of their financial situation. That's what gets lost when we focus on stereotypes. Gen X isn't lazy. They're not financially irresponsible. They're exhausted. They've been fighting economic headwinds their entire adult lives while getting almost zero recognition for it. And here's the part that I think matters most. Generation Z, the children of Generation X, may inherit these financial burdens and attitudes. The cycle doesn't just stop. Financial trauma gets passed down the same way silence about money got passed down before. But there's something different happening this time. 65% of baby boomers rarely or never discussed finances during their upbringing, whereas 30% of Gen Z frequently did. Gen X is breaking the silence even while carrying the weight of it. They're doing what wasn't done for them. They're talking to their kids about money. They're trying to prepare them for economic realities that they had to learn the hard way. They're taking all that trauma and turning it into something that might actually protect the next generation. Look, I'm not saying Gen X has it all figured out, but I think we've been looking at them wrong this whole time. We see the stress. We see the overspending and the low savings balances, and we make assumptions. We compare them to boomers who had pensions and cheaper housing. We compare them to millennials who are more vocal about their struggles. But Gen X? They just keep going. They save more than almost anyone while supporting everyone around them. They carry the highest rates of financial trauma and still manage to show up for their kids and their parents at the same time. And maybe that's the thing everyone keeps missing. Gen X money habits aren't different because they're careless or because they don't understand finance. They're different because they're the first generation to fully absorb both the silence of their grandparents and the economic shocks of the modern era. And they're still trying to build something stable in the middle of it. That's not a failure of financial planning. That's resilience under conditions most of us can't even imagine.